You are listening to Pharmacy, IT, and Me, your Informatics Pharmacist podcast. Welcome to another episode of Pharmacy, IT, and Me, your Informatics Pharmacist podcast. As with every episode, we start off this one stating that the intended audience is everybody. So today, we actually have a special guest on the podcast. It's a clinical informatics pharmacist and a very good friend of mine, Dr. Tien. How are you doing, Kevin?
Good. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for taking some time to be on the show, by the way.
Always a pleasure.
Awesome. So the idea of today's episode is actually focused on you. It's just to talk about you and your role in the clinical informatics side as a pharmacist. We'll just get started. And can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I like the color blue. I don't have a dog. I have no life. No, it's all true, but I think you meant something else. Well, I like listening to audiobooks. If I have the time, I would love to play my Switch and watch Expanse or The Good Place. But like most of folks out there, probably a lot of undergrads, I majored in bio. I graduated from pharmacy school the same year as you did in 2012. And I interned at a hospital while in pharmacy school. And when I came out, I continued working in the hospital and dabbled a little bit in long-term care pharmacy. Currently work as an informatics pharmacist actually at your old place, and I'm looking forward to Comic-Con this year in July.
Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah. I forgot this coming up. The 100, is it 150? Oh, no, 50th.
50th.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think 50.
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know, me and Kevin actually used to work at the same place. I've moved closer to home now, so we're no longer working in the same place. And I wanted to interview Kevin because he's kind of taken over all of the roles that I used to have over at where you work now. So another question I wanted to ask before I start talking about your actual job duties is what got you interested in the pharmacy informatics side?
Well, I always like to tinker with things. I feel like informatics is kind of like tinkering, not necessarily with equipment, but with a system and information. So it's fairly fun. Everything is new. You always learn new things, and instead of dealing with shiny electric things, it's shiny informational things.
That's true.
So, yeah, you can always see how tech is integrated with the flow for information, and your role really allows you to mesh workflows together with technology, and you get to see the end results of your successful or failed attempts in any projects. And it's very frustrating, but also very rewarding at the same time. So that's why I like informatics.
I like how you actually mentioned about seeing your failures, because as you know, like with all the project implementations, you always, it's never going to be the perfect try on the first try, right? There's always things you have to adjust and then readjust and then redo it again so that it becomes perfect, So
yeah, well, there's never perfect. Always shoot for the high end, though.
Yeah, of course. So with pharmacy IT and pharmacy informatics, if you actually go out and ask anyone who's in that position, you'll see that, not every pharmacist does the same thing. Every informatics pharmacist does the same thing. In fact, if you ask one informatics pharmacist, their role can be completely different versus the one next to them. So I want to ask you, actually, what is your current responsibility as an informatics pharmacist?
You're right. It's a very, very diverse setting that, at least the location that I work at right now, it's a very broad role, and no day's the same as the day before. You do the basic stuff like taking care of tickets, complaints, issues, and addressing any shortfalls that are short-term. You're also addressing short-term projects and long-term projects at the same time. Just to list or give a general idea, main things that this role touches upon is, well, within the EHR, you do product builds, you do rules and alerts, clinical decision supports included into rules and alerts. You do reports, running reports, doing audits, meaningful use, system maintenance and upgrades, or flashes that their system might require. You have to do verification or validation of these updates. And then you work on the workflow enhancement, and that's just for the EHR portion. There's also system things like the automated dispensing cabinets. You have to deal with interface issues or upgrades. There's the middleware like CorePoint. There's other systems like the pumps where you have to deal with the guardrails in the library. And there's miscellaneous items in this role that you have to take care of because it's pharmacy related, like labels, unit dose, and maintaining the website. So it's fairly diverse.
Awesome. So I know you just mentioned the pump interoperability. From what I recall when I was there is you were the person kind of spearheading that part. And I wanted to ask you if you can kind of talk about how your training as a clinical pharmacist made you very useful as an informatics pharmacist in this project.
I don't want to talk about it. Joking. In terms of any projects, within healthcare, the most important thing is patient safety. So having a clinical background staffing in the pharmacy is very helpful. And in terms of the pumps, it helps you review the guardrails, knowing where to direct more focus to for high-risk areas like high-risk drugs and high-risk workflows to minimize those risks. For example, at least with the pumps, knowing the workflow of NICU, knowing NICU drips and pediatric drips, their workflows, and breaking down the guardrails for those high-risk categories, breaking down some of those strips into weight classes and alerts are important. So that is an example with the pumps, at least.
Okay, awesome. Are there any other like upcoming projects or even current projects that you're working on that might be interesting that you want to talk about?
Currently, the project that is in progress right now is the electronic prescribing of controlled substances. So that's EPCS. Like any project, it involves a lot of departments and workflows. This one is pretty complicated in terms of there's less build items in the system, but it's more figuring out who's responsible for what and who's assigned what duties. So workflow is more important, and assigning responsibilities is more important in this project than actual building in the system. On top of that, you have to kind of figure out what regulations are coming forward. Things like in 2020, there is a new resident licensing law that would change how these workflows will work for EPCS. So that's up and coming right now.
Wow, that sounds like a complicated project.
Yep. Workflow-wise, very complicated.
Well, I wish you good luck with that.
Thank you. I'll need it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And actually, I have one more question before we end the interview. Is what was your most memorable experience so far in your current role?
Well, I would have to say it's the day where you left your old workplace and I took over, but I also gave birth. Well, not me giving birth. Sorry, my wife did this, to our son. It was a very interesting day, a very interesting week. It was, you truly don't learn informatics until you're immersed in the role. I've always helped out with the position because you were originally in that role to begin with. But hitting the ground running is a different experience than actually having someone there as your arm floaty. So that was an eye-opener. As sad as I was to see you go, and as tired as I was during that time period, it was a good experience, and I learned a lot from it. I would say working in the role itself by yourself amounts to any more training that you can get, because it's so compressed, and then you either sink or swim, and you learn all that information in a short time period.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think most people don't even have the option to sink, so they have to swim. So, and
yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you knew, but when I started in the role over there, that was my experience too. I actually had nobody to reference, and it was just me in the beginning until you came and helped out. So yeah, you pretty much experienced what I also experienced the first time I started there.
Yep. And it's the best learning experience that you can have. Just like if you're hungry, hunger is the best spice.
I guess that's true.
Odd analogy, but yes.
Yeah. But anyway, in the interest of time, and also to be respectful of your time, thank you again for being on the podcast, and thank you to letting me interview you about your current role.
Thank you.
One more thing before we end it is there any place that people can reach you if they have any more questions about pharmacy informatics or your role?
My email here is kevintienpharmd@gmail.com. That is KEVINTIENPHARMD@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And I will also put that in the show notes. So listeners, all right, if you like this episode, you can subscribe to us or rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any of your other favorite podcasting services. You can also follow us on social media on Twitter or Facebook at Pharmacy IT Me, or our Instagram by just searching for Pharmacy Informatics. or you can email us at pharmacyitme@gmail.com. If you'd like to be a guest, go ahead and please reach out to us and we'll try to schedule you in. You can also follow me on my personal Twitter account at TonyDalPharmD. But thank you again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Pharmacy IT and Me. And remember, technology is the tool, patient care is the goal.